Well, hello. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone. It's a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie. Call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. With me this morning are the show's two co-hosts, Brian, W7JET, and Dan,
Hi, everybody.
KC7MSU. And also, I'm pleased to introduce to you today's guest, Gilles, who has two call signs. I guess he's got one from the United States and one from France, AK4YH and F4WBY. And of course, we also have the regular characters in the chat room. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you have some great questions for Gilles. And so don't forget to pop those in, comments and questions. We'll put up what we think we can, the things that are appropriate at the time. And of course, you can join us for a great time today or later as we put this out as a podcast about 24 hours after the show ends. So let's go ahead then, guys, and get started. We'll go around the room and get caught up on what's been going on with everybody. And while I turn the time over to Brian, excuse me, just a minute, I need to go turn my fan off and close my door. So go ahead, Brian.
So let's see what's happened this week. We had did a bunch of soda. Had a little bit of storm damage on the property. I had a Palo Verde tree come down and take out my receive antennas. I had to fix that the other day, and got Vara HF working, WinLink email, and that's working like a champ now. So that's kind of cool. And I participated in the September VHF contest from the top of Mount Ord, which is a soda summit last weekend. Did pretty well. Not as many rovers this year, so I didn't score as many points as normal. But my social media post got picked up by our friends at amateurlogic.tv, and they talked about it for a little while on their show last night. So that was kind of cool. Nice. So anyway, I will send it over back to Charlie, back to net, yeah. W7JET.
Okay, cool. All right, let's move on over to Dan next.
Okay, well, I got to do several things ham radio related this week. So I've been working on my mock-up items for my radio install in the Taco. So that's been a lot of fun. I've been gathering parts, bits and everything. So I'm pretty close to being ready to actually put a formal install in there and take and videotape that. Also got to go up to Aztec Peak and do a soda summit up there. That was a lot of fun. Got to get out and get the truck a little bit dirty, which was great. What else? I also was able to introduce a group of youth to amateur radio. We went to the top of a small summit over by our home and discussed a little bit about amateur radio and got a few of them on VHF and talked about HF and got on there a little bit. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll get a few amateurs out of that. Yeah. And I think that's about it.
Cool. Well, you guys had a very full couple of weeks. Great. Good for you guys. I had some stuff too. My main highlight of the last couple of weeks was I drove up to Navajo Nation, and joined a friend up there. His name's Herb Goodluck, and he is the son of a code talker, a Navajo code talker from World War II. And so got to spend a lot of time talking to him about that. And he was interested in doing summits on the air and portable radio. So we did 3 summits while I was up there and drove all over. I mean, dirt roads galore, and had a great time looking at everything. And it was a good time. So that was a 3-day trip up there. And he was really interested in soda, so we got him going. I just mailed him an antenna, so he's going to start putting his portable gear together after kind of observing what I have in my pack. So that's pretty cool, and that's pretty much what I've been up to. I've been editing a little bit of video and getting it ready for the channel, and I have plans to. Where is it? Where's that radio? Where'd it go? I have plans to review a radio that was lent to me, so I'll talk about that later, I guess. Let's just move on over to Jill and see what he's got going on, what he's been up to.
Well, I haven't been very active lately. Usually I post a video once a week, but I haven't Well, I guess I just ran out of ideas, but I've come up with a couple, and also I'm helping a friend right now to set up an installation for the QO100 satellite, which is a geostationary satellite above Qatar, which covers basically from I think from eastern Brazil to Southeast Asia. So it's not a satellite that you have to chase with your Yagi. You know, it's just it's geostationary, so it's much easier. But I might get into that myself. I'm not sure, but you know, I'm more about prepping, so I'm not sure if it will be useful for prepping, because the satellite, of course, implies that you depend on an infrastructure that you don't control. So I guess we'll see about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Do you plan on putting some videos and stuff together on that on your channel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's get to know you a little bit better, Gilles. I know that you have a storied background of all kinds of things going on in your and all kinds of things we probably don't know about. But let's just get the basics. Tell us a little bit
Well,
about. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll try to make it quick.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, just
Well,
tell
I
us a little
started
bit about your maybe where you grew up, where you went to
right.
school, your career, that type of stuff.
Well, I'm French, so of course, I went to school in France for electronics, actually, and I started radio with CB, like a lot of people, you know, in the 80s, when I was about 14 years old. After that, I quit. I kind of quit radio, but it always stayed in the back of my mind. You know, it's something that I was always interested in. And then many years later, I think it was about 1994, I arrived in the US in Florida to get my pilot's license. So I was a student pilot in Sarasota, Florida. And I ended up, I didn't go to really to college in France. And so I ended up, you know, I was in a kind of a technical school, and I ended up going to college in the US. And I stayed quite some time. I stayed 22 years. I was supposed to,
Wow.
it was supposed to be 1 year, but it got extended, so to speak, and I had a great time. I should have stayed there, actually. I should never have come back to France, but you know, well, life is not something we control all the time. And but in around I think it was 2012, I really wanted to get back into radio, and I had bought a technician book a few years prior, from Radio Shack, actually. Never opened it. And at some point, I decided, well, I have to, you know, I really want to get into radio for also for prepping purposes, basically. Prepping is kind of the nice term for survivalism, so to speak, you know, but it's kind of civilized survivalism, I guess. So part of prepping, of course, is communications. And what I did is that I bought a kit. I bought an Elecraft K1 kit, which I put together, and it
Wow.
actually it worked.
Wait a minute. That was your first radio?
I think I put one kit together before. It was a DC-20B by Steve Weber. It was a really tiny, you know, really tiny.
Yeah.
It was in one of those Altoid boxes, you know, cases.
So what you must have had your schooling background must have been something in electronics then.
It was electronics, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I had a couple of years of electronics, and before that, it was actually kind of my hobby. You know, it's a little bit geeky as a kid, you know.
Okay,
And
got it.
so I put the K1 together, and then I thought, you know, darn, I don't have my license and I don't know Morse code.
Oh
so,
boy.
so I could not, you know, I used a phone app to decode the Morse code, but I needed to get my license seriously, because, you know, if I wanted to transmit, well, I had to get it. And I needed to, you know, I specifically started radio for Morse code. That was my primary goal, was to use Morse code and start with that. You know, I don't know if many people do that, but that was my primary reason for starting amateur radio. So I bought the books from the ARRL. I bought the 3 books, you know, Technician, General, Extra. And what I did is that I studied, first day I studied chapter 1 of each book, so 3 chapters. second day, chapter 2 of each of the 3 books. And I did that for a couple of weeks. I think there are 15 chapters total, and they cover the same subjects pretty much in the 3 books. And I wasn't sure I was gonna get. I was pretty confident maybe I would get general. And it just happens I got the three exams in one session. So I was extra,
Nice.
and I got
Nice.
AK4YH. And
So-
shortly after that, I started a channel. So Radio Prepper, and I didn't publish many videos from the US, I think, because it was just I started very slowly, and I published maybe 2 or 3 videos. I don't remember from the US, a few anyway, a handful of videos before I got back to France, and then I really started over there, and I decided to publish my videos in English because, of course, there's a much broader audience than if I would have used French. And my French friends here now, they just bug me all the time to make videos in French.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
there's like 5 guys watching, why would I? But I do anyway, because there are French people watching.
Okay.
But,
Well, can we stop for just a minute and back up? This great information, and I'm glad we know all this so far. One thing I wanted to back up for is that you mentioned your videos, your channels about prepping, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about that because as I mentioned before we started the stream, I have a friend. His name is Gaston. His channel is called The Tech Prepper, and I've spent time talking to him about what that means because there is a stigma surrounding prepper, and we wanted to make sure. I mean, and he always wants to make sure on his channel that people understand that his form of prepping is not maybe what the general population might think it is. What do you think about that? Is that kind of the same thing, or just kind of expand on that a little bit?
Well, okay, so prepping for me, there's a Japanese saying that goes like, that too shall end,
Uh-huh.
and that that includes good times. Not much has happened to us, or at least the Western world, since probably even Vietnam the Vietnam War was not on U.S. soil or European soil. It was in Asia. So basically, since World War II, not much has happened really, and it's like we're kind of overdue, so to speak. I hope not, but
Right. Yeah, I get you.
prepping is just basically about being ready in case something happens, and it could be simply a hurricane. I used to live in Florida, so we had hurricanes in Florida. Not so much on the in Sarasota, more on the East Coast, but we had to get ready a few times, and that's prepping basically.
Yeah.
Lots of people actually are somewhat preppers. They just don't know. They just don't know the term, but it's basically being ready for natural catastrophes. Conflicts. I don't know, industrial accidents maybe, like. I don't know, think of Fukushima or Bhopal in India, or you can. There are many examples where people had to evacuate, basically. So it could be that. It could be having to bug in. So basically, bug in is staying home with resources that you have prepared in advance, just in case you need them. So that could mean food. Of course, medicine, first aid kit, communications, unfortunately, defense as well, security. So basically, that's prepping. It's just being ready. It's and people think that sometimes they have the notion that it's kind of being paranoid, or being a little bit of a, I don't know. I mean, I guess the bad image of survivalism, the guy who runs in the woods with a rifle and shoots everything that moves, and it's just not that. It's just not that, especially for communications. It's just being able to communicate in case the internet is down, or the phone don't work. What do you do? How do you communicate, and how do you maybe help your community. I mean, the first goal of radio prepping, so to speak, is just basically to help yourself and a small group, family, friends. If you have a mutual aid group, so to speak, that could be that. And then, if you can, as a side gig, so to speak, would be to help other people maybe as well. But radio prepping is not AMCOM, it's not emergency communications, it's not disaster relief. It could be that, but it's not its primary goal. Its primary goal is to maybe it's a selfish goal, but it's to because you can't save everyone, and it's to basically make sure that your family, your friends, your group are fine, can communicate and face the situation until things go back to normal, or even if they don't.
Yeah, even earlier this week when I was talking with the youth group, that subject came up, and I described how I would use amateur radio to gather my family in the event. And we have a large nuclear plant here to the west of Phoenix, if something happened there. So I kind of described the scenario of how we would gather our family and move them out of danger zone, and how we would use amateur radio and other radio technologies to, try and stay together and be able to communicate. So there's a lot of facets to it. So
absolutely. And now we have digital modes, like a JS8, which is a favorite of preppers also. Of course, Morse code, my favorite.
Yeah, I think it's ours too as well.
Yeah,
And,
I saw two on here that, going along with Morse code, what works really well is QRP radio, and you seem to have quite a few videos and discussions about kits and the use of QRP. So I was wondering how you kind of got involved with that, and what you enjoy about it.
It's, for me, basically it's a necessity. It's not really a choice, because you need to consider that you might not be able to recharge batteries. Grid power might be down, and most likely would be down. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be so much of an emergency, right? So if grid power is down, you have to recharge batteries. You're not going to use a radio that's draining 1 amp on receive on 3 18650 cells or 8 AA batteries. It's just not going to work. You're not going to plug in a big ICOM, that's going to output 100 watts your batteries are not going to last. They're going to blow up. So basically, QRP, low power, is a necessity. You need to be able to communicate with just a few watts, because that's what you're going to have. And that's true even if you're staying at home. You might not have the means to recharge a battery. You might for some time if you have a generator, for instance, but generators are noisy and they use gas. Yeah, and that's not something that's going to last, or that might be even desirable if you want to be discreet, So having a small solar panel, for instance, or, some means to recharge batteries. Actually, I have do I have my hand crank charger here? No, I thought it was... I have so much stuff in this small apartment. I can pretty much touch radio items anywhere, But actually, yeah, it's just a matter of necessity. And even if you have to evacuate in a vehicle, or in that case, you have your 12-volt battery, of course, but you might have to get somewhere on foot as well. If you're on foot, you're not going to carry, a 40-pound battery, a 50-pound battery. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to carry the lightest gear that you can possibly carry, and hence the need to have small batteries that you can easily recharge, and that's going to last, even quite a long time. My K1, for instance, uses about 50 milliamps per hour on receive. With a small set of batteries, like 3 18650 cells, I can go days, without any problem. Same thing with, let's say, the USDX, from DL2 MAN.
Yep.
That small tiny radio. That's also USB, LSB, all mode 5-band radio. It's absolutely awesome. Probably
Yeah,
going to buy a second one.
he did an
Yeah.
amazing job with that to
Yeah.
develop that, didn't he?
And that was inspired from actually QRP Labs, Hans Sommer's
Yep.
QCX, if I'm not mistaken, which I have also a couple of them.
Yeah, me
And
too.
it's so QRP is a necessity. It's not a choice. It's not something I do for I have fun doing it, but it's really because I need it. I need my gear to be small and light and cheap.
You mentioned solar panels. So I've got a foldable set of solar panels, but also I'm kind of interested in looking at like a roll-up type or fold, very small foldable that I could use, while I'm on a peak or something like that to keep batteries, charged up. So have you found a good model that you like for that kind of application?
Well, it's I buy the cheap stuff because I don't have much money. So basically, I have bought foldable solar panels from China on AliExpress. Simply, and not all of them are good. I mean, it's really it's
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's experimentation basically to find what works best for you.
pretty much. But I mean, what you have to consider is that if you experiment, you're going to spend money. You're going to buy a few, and you could buy a very good
Yeah.
one for the price of a few. So
Yeah.
I think you might want to check out Julian's channel, Survival Tech Nord.
Oh, yeah, he's
He
got a good
has a
channel.
lot of stuff on that.
Yep.
And he's a specialist of lots of videos on battery management and solar power. So I highly suggest everyone to check out his channel as well. He has a lot of that. I buy the cheap stuff, and I buy enough of them that if one if one doesn't work anymore, I'm going to stay polite. You have spares basically.
Right.
And the important thing is that to use I use 18650 cells, and I have found a so-called MPPT charger. I'm not sure if it's a real MPPT, but it's basically a circuit board with the support for the batteries, and I make a 3D printed case for it. And basically, any panel that outputs, the 18 to 20 volts standard for solar panels, you can plug in and it recharges your battery pack, and that works pretty well. I think that device is the brand is Wonton, WONTON. I have just go on YouTube and search for Radio Prepper and WONTON, and you'll find a video on that. And otherwise, I recharge. I have separate chargers for 18650 cells as well, made by Nitecore, NITECORE. And I have also AA batteries. I use packs of 8 AA batteries also as well, and that works pretty good. So small batteries, and that allows me, of course, to use small panels as well. So that's important because everything affects everything else. You have a big battery or you have a big radio, you're going to need a big battery, which means you're going to need a big solar panel, which means that you're going to need a bigger bag. And it compounds. It's a compounding effect, and ounces, ounces equals pain. I think that's saying like that. Ounces equal pain, basically. So you want to stay as light as you can, and that can allow you also as well to have spares, like 2 is 1, 1 is none. That's a prepping saying. So if you can have 2 radios instead of 1, you damage one, you have a spare. At least you can stay light and have light gear that you're not going to be tempted to throw on the side of the road after walking for 10 miles.
Yeah, light bag is something that has just never worked out for me, as Brian and Charlie can attest to. That doesn't really happen. I take the kitchen sink with me half the time.
Oh, me too. But if you're a prepper, you have to carry so much other things, that any item that you add, and I have more than I can carry actually, so I don't know how it I don't know how it bug out. Probably I would have to bug out in a vehicle, but in my truck. But that's probably not, it wouldn't be possible because everybody else would be on the road. So I'm not sure, but I definitely have way too much stuff also, and I have to lighten up a bit. And you get you get rid of the weight wherever you actually have to lose weight myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So you get rid of the weight any way you can.
Are you going to say something, Brian?
I was just going to say, with the solar panels too, the efficiency on them sometimes helps because some of them are really good and some of them, you cover one portion of the cell and the efficiency drops or the charge rate drops by like 80%, depending upon the quality of the panel. I've actually known I have some inexpensive ones that I've had for a couple of years now outside, and if they even have when they get dust over them or they're fairly dirty after a rainstorm, I watch my charging current go from 4 amps down to a half an amp. And I was like, I have to go outside and dump some water on them to clean them off. Newer panels are a lot better. In fact, those ones that we got for the club seem to perform really well compared to what I have right now. One of the questions I was going to ask you, and I had this for one of our previous guys, and I run into this myself with a lot of my friends that are like, well, I just get I have the radio. I don't need the license because when everything goes down, it's not going to matter anyway. And I just have it in the drawer. So that way I have it when I get it. And I always ask them, I said, well, I have a gun. I've never been hunting, but I figure I've got it. So, when things go down, if I have to go hunting, I just go out and kill it and that should be it. Right. And that
you can also buy
yeah.
You can also buy a guitar.
Yeah.
And then say, well, if I have to play in a band, I'll just go ahead and play in a band.
Right. And that's one of the things I run into a lot when I ask them, I say, okay, well, how does it work? And they generally don't have an answer for it. And I say, well, that's exactly it. That's precisely what the problem is. If you don't practice with it, if you don't use it, if you don't understand how the equipment works, when you're under duress and you really need to use it, it's not going to go well. And it's not at that point, and at that point, it's not like, theoretically, Google's not going to be available. There's not going to be YouTube videos available to show you what you need to know. So if you have zero knowledge of how that piece of equipment works, you're setting yourself up for just having a piece of equipment that you're not going to know how to use at all.
Absolutely. And people ask, why should I get a license? And well, without a license, you can't really practice. You might be able to practice a little bit, using it's PMR in Europe, it's FRS in the US, or MERS or GMRS, but that's still local communications only. You're not going to be able to practice a whole lot without a license. And also license, gets you started. It's a license to learn, basically.
The practice aspect is really important. I think because you get out in the field and things happen even if you're well prepared. Like I take an extra antenna when I go on my soda expeditions just because if I get on top of a mountain and find that my antenna has big issues, then at least I've got a backup. But you don't deal with those things and you don't decide how you want to deal with them unless you practice.
Right. And if I have to, if I lose my antenna, and I can use a barbed wire fence. How do you do that? If you don't know. And also some bands are not going to work at some times or some days, or are you going to use such and such band in the evening or in the middle of the day, in the winter, in the summer? That's a lot of things to consider. Basically, it's not necessarily going to work. It's like people buying those FRS radios in plastic wrap, at any store, Walmart, or whatever, and they're like, well, it says 30 miles.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It doesn't work. We're 500 feet away.
Yeah.
Well, it can walk 30 miles. I've done it, much more than that, actually.
Yeah.
But you have to be on top of a mountain for that. It is a lot of things you're not going to know if you're not ready. Same thing, for prepping. It goes for if you have a first aid kit, what's in it. Do you know how to use the stuff that's in there? have you taken a course, or stopping bleeds or CPR or anything like that? It's one thing to watch stuff on a video. Doing it is quite another. So it's by experimentation that you learn all that stuff, and it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, Charlie and Dan know at least my soda, my HF gear for soda weighs less than 4 pounds. So I generally like to try to keep my pack under 25 pounds when I'm going out to do a trip. So I have plenty of room to carry water and other things, but I have all the essentials. And I always preach, at least in Arizona, when you go out to do an activation here, you should be prepared to stay for at least 24 hours. Because generally, if the SAR people here can find you or they know where you are, you will be out in 24 hours or less. If you're prepared to stay over 24 hours, you're probably going to be in a good place when they do finally find you. But the key is making sure it's not hide and seek. And that's kind of the when I think of prepping, or at least for my personal preparedness for stuff, that's how I have things oriented. So when I'm away from the house, how long do I need to be able to get back to where I need to be based on where I'm going to be at? And then once I'm home, how long should I be able to hold out for at home until I can start gathering resources outside of my circle?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I heard you say before, Jill, that, let's see, what's the quote? I do portable radio for the acquisition of skills. And that's the answer, right? I mean, people are like, why do portable radio? Why only 5 watts? I mean, get a tower and do 100 watts. Well, I mean, there's skills involved in that too, but really, if you are prepping, if you're thinking of ways to prepare for whatever might come, especially with communications, and you're applying that, then you're acquiring those skills. I don't know, I can't tell you how I know how the bands work, but I just do, and it's just because of experience. I know certain times a day bands perform better than others and all that, and it's just kind of it's through being out there and doing it.
And I suspect a lot of people who have a transceiver that outputs 100 watts actually don't radiate 100 watts. They probably radiate 10, because they don't have a good antenna installation. Of course, it works because QRP works, but how much of that power, you're outputting 100 watts, how much of that power is actually radiated efficiently? That's a question you have to ask yourself, because the day you don't have that power, your antenna installation, you might discover it's just, crap.
Yeah.
So you might want to,
exactly.
check that before. And the best way, of course, to test an antenna is to reduce your power to 5 watts and see if you can still make contact. If you can't make contact, and I don't mean over one day, I mean trying, at different times and so on. If you can't make contact with 5 watts, you have an antenna problem. You don't have, it's not that you don't have enough power, it's that you don't radiate that power efficiently.
Also, it seems from what I've observed is that people who operate portable and with lower wattages, they have, they put the time into better antenna systems, for example, because they know that they have to operate on lower wattages and they don't have that much to spare. So you see a lot more, single band antennas, simplification of antennas, right. Simplification of the gear that they use, because the simpler it is, the more opportunities you have to actually make that contact.
Absolutely. I think an antenna should be a full-size antenna. It should be a half wave. It doesn't matter if it's a dipole or an unfed half wave. That's my favorite. Or even a quarter wave with good radials, but it has to be full size. You're not going to, and of course, compromise antennas work. I've used a lot of them, with a coil or an unun at the base and a short whip. It works. I mean, I have a PRC 320 and a military antenna, a British military antenna. It has a 2.5 meter whip, which is pretty darn short. It's so that would be an 8-foot long whip, basically. It's very short, but it actually works. Now, it's not working as well as a half wave, of course. and it had 30 watts. So 30 watts for me is a lot of power. It's QRO at 30 watts.
Yeah.
But if you were limited to 5 watts with like a little USDX or FT 818 or something like that, that short whip is not going to be very useful. I mean, you might make some contacts with when the propagation is good, and of course we're lucky because the solar cycle is coming back now. So we're going to have we're going to have much better propagation fairly soon, but right now it's just not, it's not, you need that half wave if you want to, if you're using just a few watts, you need a half wave antenna. And, you can make one. I use very thin wire. I think it's like 26 gauge or something like that. You don't need a very thick or heavy wire. I can put a 40-meter antenna in my short pocket, because it's with the transformer. Because it's very small and very light, you don't need a thick wire, and you can make something that's very portable. But you need the length.
Yeah, I saw that you put together my friend Adam a K6ARK at his NFET half-wave kit, and I think he uses like 28 gauge wire, or 26, right. Or some really whisker hair, and yeah, it's a good antenna.
That reduces the bandwidth, but if you know the frequency, if you operate CW, for instance, or digital, it's basically on a specific frequency, so you don't need to kind of wander around too much,
Yep.
So also a thinner wire makes for a higher impedance. So when I use a thin wire, I'm going to use a 64-to-1 transformer instead of a 49-to-1, for instance. But you can make I have experimented with different size toroids, and people usually suggest an FT240-43, and that's a big that's a big toroid. And then I went to FT140-43. Then I went to an FT82-43. And your friend, I think he uses an FT, I don't know, I think it's like 40 something.
It is in the 40s, tiny, yeah. I can't remember.
Tiny. And you know what? In theory, there should be a big difference in performance. In practice, there isn't. I don't know why that is. I'm sure there is a difference. I'm sure it's not as efficient, but it's not that much less efficient, and it works just fine. Now I use the FT82-43, and I have no problem making contacts, and it makes for a little tiny box, and you don't need anything bigger than that. Of course, you can put 100 watts in it. You're going to cook it, but
All right, let's pause for a minute, and let me scroll back up, and let's get caught up on our chat. There's a few comments that were made early on. We were talking about that satellite, and Joseph, Victor Echo 3, Julie, Golf Kilo Tango says the QO100 is 1 degree below the horizon at the eastern tip of Newfoundland, to give us an idea of footprint. So
I think it's 34, 35 degrees here, so it's much easier.
Yeah. Let's see. And then the next comment that I found interesting was Shane, Scout 75, who I think he is really interested in the whole being prepared thing too. He says that he blames popular reality show for tarnishing the term prepper. He says,
absolutely.
He says, for me, prepping is having the mindset and skills of past generations, being able to care for yourself and loved ones in rough times. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
And I've seen those shows, and people who participated in those shows regretted it, bitterly afterwards, because it was just sensationalism, and especially the Geographic Channel, Doomsday Preppers.
Yeah.
I think that did a lot of a big disservice to, because they present people like, just basically absolute nutcases, and
Yes,
and I don't consider myself a nutcase, I'm just a regular guy, and preppers are just regular people. They're not conspiracy theorists. I mean, some of them are, but actually a lot of theories have been proven actually correct, lately. So with everything that's been going on these last few years, and I'm not going to mention it, but you all know what I'm talking about. it's we've discovered that being ready is not a luxury, or it's not a mental illness. It's
Yeah,
it's a pretty down to earth thing to do.
Yep.
Yeah, and I like what Scout mentioned about, getting it back in touch with, skills from past years and past generations, right? I mean, even something, if you have to bug out, being able to, use an axe or whatever to, help fashion a lean-to or something like that. I think a lot of people don't know how to, do those things or what it might take. So there's a lot of value in skills that our parents and our grandparents had that is kind of missing in today's society.
And not even just that, but community building. Who talks to their neighbors anymore?
True. That's very true in our community.
That's exactly
same
what I
thing
was
here.
gonna bring
I
up.
live in an apartment block, and I know a couple neighbors, 2 or 3, but I don't know most of the people here. If anything happens, we'd have to basically secure this place, and the best way to do that would be, using walkie-talkies, because someone's going to have to be at the gate, someone's going to be in the back, someone's going to watch out of their terrace, balcony, whatever.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and we all have different skill sets, right? So if you
Right.
are in community, right, you can find people that have different skill sets, than yourself, and you all can survive much better with multiple skill sets.
I couldn't grow a potato to save my life, and some people know how to do that, and
Yep.
and that's if you're building a group, it's important to choose people wisely and people who have different skills. Now, I know that it's very hard to do, because I've been trying to do that here, and nobody's interested. French people are so used to be basically under the government assistance and all that stuff, that they have kind of lost. Well, not all of them, but it's hard to find people to do that, and it's even harder to find people who want to play with radios or use a radio. And so it's so difficult to get people to interested and get them to get a license, like family members or friends. They don't want to hear about radio whatsoever.
No. Yeah, I
Whomever
agree.
has a wife who's also a ham is a blessed man.
Yeah, that's true. I think all 3 of us. Well,
Yeah.
me, Brian, and I have, and then Dan's wife is interested too.
Lucky guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's very hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was gonna,
you
yeah,
can
I was going to mention that we were talking about what is it? The reason to get involved in ham radio, and we talked about several things. But the thing that came to my mind that I didn't have time to mention that later, but I thought I'd bring it up, and that is one of the reasons is to build community. We're talking right now about community as it relates to somebody close to you that you can use and rely upon. But when I'm out there on a mountain, I make friends with people, all over the world, especially coast to coast. I mean, and I've met many people that I've have been regular people that have chased me, and I have good relationships with many of them. And so if I need to reach somebody, say in Georgia, I know that I can do that because I've practiced that and I have a relationship there. So it's good.
I always say it's important to make an RF map of your surroundings. So basically, you could get a paper map actually of your area, of your state, or a county, and just put people's names, and which frequency you can find them on, and do that. You could even have a whole countrywide map and do that as well. I have friends that I know. I have a very good friend, Ray, W7ASA. He was basically my Morse code Elmer, so to speak. And I hope he sees this video. That would be fun. I'll send it to him. But I know which frequency to find him on, because we used to use those frequencies. We had a SCAD every morning to practice, and I know which frequencies I'm going to find, where I'm going to find them if I need to. Also, JS8 is a great is a great digital mode. Actually, you should check out the a channel called S2 Underground.
Oh, I think I've seen him. Yeah.
It's open source intelligence, and he is big into communications and big into JS8 as well. And he has a comms plan that that I have, that actually I'm going to be posting that and probably making a video about fairly soon also. And that's going to be very interesting. It's going to include JS8, which is a great digital mode for preppers because it allows you to chat basically, and it's extremely performant. You know, I've been heard in the US from here with 2 watts and my magnetic loop antenna here on the terrace. So it's basically based on the FT8 engine. It's not FT8, but it's based on it. And it allows chatting and relaying messages, and it'll probably other features that Jordan, the designer, is going to be working on, and that's probably the best mode for prepping that I know of.
Yeah. Cool. Let's get back to some of these other comments, get caught up before we run out of time here, because we still have some more questions. So a friend of mine, Mark, who I've actually met in person, we've done some stuff together. He says, "Bonjour, mon ami." Whatever that means.
Bonjour.
I don't know what that means. What does it mean?
Well, bonjour means hello, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I knew bonjour, but I don't know what the mon ami, what that
Mon
is.
ami, my friend.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Then we have Mike. He says he's getting ready to bring a new ham out for a soda is for the first time, and so good luck with that, Mike. That's cool. It's always good to bring new people into the hobby. And then another comment from Shane. Portable radio is a continuous battle to find the balance between 2 mantras. Jill mentioned pounds, ounces to pounds, pounds to pain. 2 is 1, 1 is none. I think he meant to say
1 is none. Yeah, 1 is 0.
Yep, for sure. N3. Okay, so KN6 Easy I think that's Mike. If I remember, I think that's Mike from California. Jill's videos helps inspire me to get into ham radio before I was licensed. Today, I getting ready to do this Route 66 Museum in the Victoria area to opt for this. So he's doing a special event. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I know him. Awesome. He's a great guy, and I think he'll enjoy it out there. It's good. Then we have Mike again. He says he's when he operates low power, he pays much more attention to everything because which is good. The antenna, the feed line, height, direction, everything. Yeah, when you don't have much power, you really got to pay attention.
Yep.
Yeah, just a couple more here. We've got Roger. I activated my first park, had my first pile up on K3186 on the 13th. 94 contacts in 78 minutes. My BioNO 12 ampere battery ran down 10 minutes after I went QRT. He must have been operating 100 watts with that, huh?
I probably make less than 100 contacts per year, so let alone in one sitting.
Yeah, that's a really good number of contacts. All right, let's see here. Who else we got? I'm trying to go through these before we. Let's see. So we've got Mike again. He's saying he's heading out. He's off to do the activation, and then Lee says also check out the Tech Preppers. We mentioned Gaston earlier, and so yeah, check out that channel as well. I think that catches us up.
I'm subscribed to him too. Yeah.
Yeah. What's Jill's favorite setup these days? That was going to be actually my next question, Jill. I was going to, well, partly anyway. I was going to ask you build a lot of antennas and you put them out on your YouTube channel. So I was going to say, tell us what's your 1 or 2 favorite. And I think you might have mentioned it, but your 1 or 2 favorite antennas. But go ahead and answer his question.
Right. My favorite antenna, bar none, is the unfed half wave. With the impedance transformer. Now, I'm really talking about the unfed half wave, meaning really a half wave wire. I'm not talking about a random wire with a 9-to-1 Unun, because that has a few hundred ohms of impedance. So you need a 9-to-1 to get it close to 50. If you have a half wave wire, which is really what you want, then you need a 49-to-1 or a 64-to-1 transformer. So basically you have a half wave wire. You have your little Unun transformer at the end, and that's it. That's all you need. And I like it because it might not be as efficient as a dipole, but you only need one attachment point to hang it to some. You can use. I use a telescopic mast, either a spider beam or like a fishing rod or something like that. And I just basically bring up my antenna, or sometimes I just attach a piece of lead at the end, or a rock, and I just swing it like this and throw it over a branch. Before I used a slingshot, but it's just I found it works just as well with just throwing it by hand. And you can throw something pretty high like that with you give it quite a bit of speed, and you let it go at the right time, and you can actually get a wire pretty high up. And that's what I do now. And it's because it's fast, it's very quick to put up. I attach the wire to a bit of fishing line, and actually I throw the fishing line and I attach the weight on the fishing line. I throw the fishing line in the tree, like a pine tree. It goes over, comes back down, and then I hoist my antenna wire. That way I can recover the antenna wire, because if you just put a rock or something at the end of your antenna wire, throw it in the tree, it might get hung up, up there, and you're not getting it back, basically. So and you don't want to leave wires up trees, in nature anyway. It's not they're not Christmas ornaments, so and that's the way I do it. So basically, my favorite antenna is the unfed half wave, absolutely. And I use one wire per band. I don't try to make it a multi-band antenna. It can be a multi-band antenna with harmonics, but it's not that great. It's better to use one wire per band. And you can put two wires on the same unun. One goes one way, the other one goes the other way. That works fine too. And the favorite radio, my favorite prepping radio now, really has become the one I mentioned, the USDX by DL2MAN. I bought one on AliExpress for like 100 euros, like $120, something like that. You have to make sure you buy it from a reseller that's approved by DL2MAN, though, because a lot of the Chinese companies have stolen the design and have made modifications to it, and those modifications are not good, because lots of those modifications are done for financial reasons, not performance reasons, And DL2MAN on his website, dl2man.com, has a list of approved sellers, and that radio is just great. I mean, it's awesome. And for digital mode, I use the QDX from Hans Summers, qrp-labs.com. That's great. It's only 2.5 watts, but using JS8 mode, it's awesome. And if you have a computer that you can leave on, what's great is that you can actually leave your radio on, and you can be gone for the day, come back in the evening. You can have a message in your inbox, if your radio has been left on receive and your computer is on, if you have the battery power for that, But the QDX is great because the current consumption is pretty much nothing,
Yep.
And that's what I like it. So the USDX, favorite radio, favorite antenna, probably the unfed half wave, no contest. Also for handheld radios, FM. I don't think digital is very useful, except if you want to use encryption, which you could use only if in a dire situation, of course, because it's illegal on the ham bands. But DMR radios are great. But I really like the Yaesu VX6. It's very rugged. It's practically indestructible. Basically, you're not going to break that radio. It's fully waterproof. It's more expensive than a Baofeng.
Yeah.
It's pretty much 10 times the price of a Baofeng, but it's going to last. And I like that one for a handheld. I like it a lot, Other than that, really, I mean, that's those are my three favorites, really.
Good.
Yeah. Other antennas, I really like the Delta Loop.
I've
for
never
like
used the Delta Loop.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of 6 meters FM with military radios, like this one. I can grab this one; it's close enough. like the PRC 351. That's a British FM radio. Goes from anywhere from 30 to 76 megahertz, 4 watts. Actually, the radio is just that part here. That's a filter and some kind of a tuner, and you attach a battery here on the bottom. And that's heavy. That's not, I wouldn't use that for prepping, but I kind of like them. It's just stuff that I really enjoy. So for 6 meters, I use a delta loop, sometimes a J-pole also. That's pretty good. You can make a J-pole with ladder line, roll it up and put it in a bag. And that works for 2 meters as well, to give more range to your walkie-talkie, basically. So that can be, it fits in your pocket as well. It's very light. So I really like that. And really, that's about it. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of stuff, but we don't have hours, so.
No, we don't. Yeah. Brian or Dan, any other questions for Gilles?
Yeah, I was kind of curious about 3D printing, and it's pretty popular in the amateur world. I mean, what's its utility in the amateur world, and as far as creating items? I would imagine it's pretty handy in this space.
I'll tell you, I wasn't sure I was going to buy a 3D printer, and I finally decided to do it. And I've been printing like pretty much every week ever since.
Bravo!
It's amazing. It's extremely useful. You can print. I print a lot of boxes for projects, antenna projects. I've just printed something. I can find probably something like here. Helical antenna, 5.8 gigahertz for my drones. That 3D printed. I have 3D printed stuff everywhere. Simple stuff here to attach a wire. Winders. I just printed the stuff for my friend there for the Q100 satellite. I printed the form for an helical antenna on 2.4 gigahertz. It's just endless stuff that you wouldn't think you needed, but basically it's stuff that you're not going to have to buy, because you buy a $30 roll of filament. It's 1 kilogram, it's more than 2 pounds. You can print a lot of stuff for cheap, and it's amazing the things like, cases. You can use flexible filament to make like impact resistant stuff. And I'm forgetting. I probably have even more.
Morse code keys.
Morse code keys, yeah.
Insulators. You name it. It's just endless projects that you can print, and it's extremely useful. I couldn't do without. I have 2 of them here, and I don't even have the space to. I'm probably gonna have to sell one because I don't want to. But
yeah, I've been looking at them, and it seems like it's a good way to go to take and ruggedize some things in amateur radio that otherwise may get damaged, because you are moving them around all the time. So I've been kind of looking at them, and I've got a spot selected. Unfortunately, it's where my wife's desk is right now, but I have selected a spot for one.
Yeah,
and having a 3D printer is like having a pickup truck. You have a lot of new friends.
Yeah,
yes,
true.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody's ready to move when you buy a new pickup truck.
And I use it. I build drones as well, so I use a lot of 3D printing for drones. I'm a shooter too, so I do a lot of printing for that. Not going to get into details, but I don't print the items themselves, but I print like, loading blocks and a lot of. Same thing. It's just I had to fix a rifle that a piece of plastic on a Remington was broken, basically, and I'm like, where am I going to find that? It's just impossible to find. Basically, you can't find it. It's not for sale. So I just measured it, put it in the computer, made the file, and put it on the printer, and An hour later, I had my part, and that's the thing. There are a lot of things that you wouldn't think that you're going to need it for, and or I should say, there are so many things that you don't suspect you're going to use it for. That's what I should say. That it's just it's extremely useful. I couldn't do without. If my printer broke, I would just either buy a new one the same day or try to fix it. But I can't do without a 3D printer now.
Yeah, because a lot of times you'll find that for whatever device it may be, that parts are not available anymore because it's an older device, or they simply just don't sell that part anymore. And if you
I
can
have to
measure
print-
it and put it in CAD, you're good to go.
I have to print. Actually, I should do it this weekend. I have to print a vacuum cleaner wheel for my parents. And it's endless. It's just every single week I print stuff all the time. It's
really
so useful.
That's really cool. Okay, so Nick says NFED halfway for the win. So he agrees with you, and then he says he thinks he worked. He says I think I worked Jill in March from a soda summit QRP. Do you always operate QRP, Jill?
I don't have any other radio.
Yeah, well then that would be QRP coast across the pond. That's pretty good.
And actually, I have I think my most powerful radio, is the PRC 320. That's 25, 30 watts.
Yeah.
And I have my Xiegu G90. That's 20 watts.
Yeah, that's
I'm not especially a fan of QRP, and I'm not specifically like my Elecraft K1 outputs like a little bit more than 6 watts. I set it at 6 watts. I don't care about 5 watts. I don't care about being QRP. Yeah. It's not my goal, I just want something light, and I want enough power that it's going to work. If my K1 could output 10 watts, I would set it to 10 watts. I don't care. Although it's starting to drain the batteries at that point, but I would certainly reduce the power to save on battery if you want to transmit quite a bit. If you're receiving, I don't care. And I'm always telling people that to be very careful about when you buy a radio. Ignore output power. You don't care. It doesn't matter if the radio has a few watts. It's enough. You have to consider current draw on receive first. Get the radio that has the minimum current draw on receive. Power, it's just, if you have a good antenna, it's a few watts will do it. Even like 2-3 watts CW is fine. 2-3 watts digital is just fine. And if you have 10 watts SSB, it's okay. You don't need more than that. You don't need an amp, certainly not. And you don't really need more power than that. Yeah. And that's a big fallacy that people believe, especially new people. They believe you have to have a 100 watts radio, and it's absolutely not true. First, it's going to be costing you a whole lot more to buy a new one, and a 7300 ICOM. How much is that? It's just $1,200. I mean, it's just you don't need that much power to start with. You can buy a USDX for $120. And it's going to work. You're going to make contact with that. You're not going to win a contest. I don't do contests. People know what I think about contests.
Yeah, I know what
say it. But but you're not going to win a contest. But it's going to work. You're going to make contacts with just a few watts.
Yeah. One or two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up, Brian.
I was going to actually just get, and this is probably a long question to ask, but I think it's a good one. The EMP threat. There's lots of different schools of thought on that. I have my own, and some of the stuff that was put out by the ARRL, especially in the 80s when the nuclear threat was a real thing. I followed a lot of that stuff, but I run into all kinds of people that have various opinions, and some of them are based in fact, and some of them are based in what they see on TV, on the drama shows, and it's I think some of it is productive, and some of it's very counterproductive.
Sure. Well, 1858. I think it was September 1858, if I'm remembering well. At the Carrington event, there was a big solar storm, and actually telegraph stations caught on fire. People got electrocuted. They could even operate. Some places they could operate without having the battery connected. And today, a Carrington event like the one that happened back then could actually absolutely disable any electronics that has a PN junction. So any microprocessor, transistor, basically any electronic device that we use today could be destroyed by a solar storm. It's not only nuclear explosions during conflicts that you have to worry about. It is solar storms as well, and the solar cycle is coming back, so you have to be careful about that. Absolutely. And of course also a conflict. What's going on in the world right now, it's I'm pretty worried about that. And you have to be ready. So a lot of my radios are in Faraday cages. Now, what kind of Faraday cage I use? Well, it's pretty simple. I go to the grocery store and I buy a cookie tin. One of those the big tin cans full of cookies,
Mm-hmm.
And I eat all the cookies, okay? Usually in one sitting.
There you go.
So that I can use the box as a Faraday cage. Now, you have to insulate the inside of the box. So usually I put my radios in, of course, my radios are, small radios. I put them in a plastic bag and I put the plastic bag in the box. And that's enough to protect your electronics. And remember, it's not only radios you want to protect. If you have optics, and I mean like, rifle optics or anything like that, or actually flashlights also have electronics in them now. They have, they have circuit boards and processors. It might be nice to have a pocket calculator also in there. There are a lot of things that even your phone, if you want to use your phone for to take pictures or anything like that. Of course, if anything bad happens, probably the phone service would be out. But having a phone, if you want to take photos and videos, who knows, later might be useful. And some apps might be useful, that don't need the internet to function. So you want to protect your electronics like that, just simply putting them in a metal box. It could be a trash can, metal trash can. You don't want too much of a gap. Actually, you don't want any gap between the cover and the receptacle. So you have to mind that, to be mindful of that. But other than that, really, that's about it. That's the only way to protect those devices. Now they make bags also that are they make bags that can protect your electronics. Also, I'm not sure if they're just as good. I don't quite know. There are companies that make devices for your house. Also, of course, you can put your house in a Faraday cage. So like EMP Shield, I have the link on my videos. I don't know how good those things are. I think it's just basically it just grounds everything up in a nanosecond. If there is a field, an electric field, that's the sudden peak in the electric field, and that could save a lot of stuff. Probably, I'm not sure. But I don't take any risk. I do keep quite a bit, more than half of my radios, and I probably have 40 of them in metal cases. I have a big metal chest right there, and I have a bunch of radios in it. Yeah, that wasn't a cookie chest. I would be much fatter if if that was the case. But the cookie jars, I have a few cookie jars. Yeah, and it's you get the cookies too. So.
Any follow-up questions or comments, Brian?
I'm not sure if that's what you wanted to know about it, but
no, I was curious what your thoughts were and how you were doing it, what your resources were for coming up with your mitigation plan. That kind of covered it.
Yeah, basic Faraday cage. I don't look any further than that. And I none of my radios are plugged in ever in an antenna. I only plug in my radios when I use them. Of course, a big EMP would fry anything that's if it's outside, even if it's not plugged in, it's going to fry. So So definitely, metal boxes, insulated.
Cool. All right, last question, Jill, and then we'll let you go and get back to operating portable radio. And this question comes actually from a friend of mine who I know from the Jerry Net, and it's Dennis, and he has a podcast, and he wanted to make sure I asked about your sailing fiasco or incident or whatever. But just generally speaking, my question is, tell us a little bit about your maritime mobile sailing and ham radio.
Well, I restored a sailboat in Florida, and I decided to sail to the Bahamas. And not only the Bahamas, but I wanted to go much further. I didn't have a big plan. I didn't have like a big destination or whatever. I wasn't planning on going around the world or anything like that. But I wanted to go far, and travel for maybe a couple of years, 2-3 years. And so I crossed to the Bahamas. It took me about 19 hours. I arrived on the Bahamas, the plateau there, but I was kind of way further north than I planned on, because the current, the Gulf Stream, pushed me further north than I had planned. It was a 26-footer sailboat, and so the weather got pretty bad. So I threw the anchor, and I had 2 days of absolute hell. I was really sick. I couldn't drink. I couldn't eat. I was dehydrated, so no food possible. Everything would come back up. Actually, I was so dehydrated and so tired that I started hearing people talking outside of the boat. It was auditory hallucinations, And I really thought there was another boat that had come and stopped right next to mine, and I heard people chatting. There's nobody there. So basically, after 2 days, I was able to drink a little bit of juice from a can of peaches. Give me a little bit of a boost, and the weather cleared, and I'm like, okay, let's go back. I was unable to raise the anchor, and I was perfectly able to raise that anchor by myself, usually no problem. But I was so weak and so sick that I couldn't. I just couldn't.
Wow.
So I had to cut it. Cut off the anchor rod. And then because the boat had been, bouncing for 2 days, something got loose. I don't know what, but I was unable to restart the engine. The starter wouldn't start. I had a hand crank, but I was so weak, and that I couldn't turn it. And it was a small 10 horsepower 1-cylinder diesel, but not. Again, I could really start it without any problem with the hand crank, because I practiced it, but I was just too weak for. I was unable to do that. And that's what you have to consider also for prepping, is your body. You have to take care of it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how things can change, very quickly. But basically, I was then able to raise the sail and go straight to north. What was it? North End, West End. Cleared with immigration and customs, and but I couldn't get into the port, because every time I was trying to come with the sail up, as fast as I could to enter the port, the marina, because I was getting closer to shore, the wind would die down, and I was unable to get in. Called on the radio, nobody could get me in, and nobody was there to give me a tow. So I anchored in front of the beach, spent the night there. Everything was fine. Unbeknownst to me, it wasn't a safe area for anchoring, really. The ground wasn't, good. Next day, I take my dinghy, put the motor on, I go inside the marina, I go to, check in, go to the restaurant, go to eat. After that, I go to the bar, I send some emails, drink a little Cointreau. And it was like 5:30 p.m. That was in December. And I decide to go back to my boat. Take the dinghy, go back. The boat isn't there where I left it. So you can imagine my gut, my stomach squeezing, I found a couple of young guys on a motorboat who took me to searching for a couple of hours. Next day, I found a gentleman to give me a ride, and we had information from a meteorologist, a famous meteorologist in the U.S. who gave me it made a calculation of the approximate position the boat should be at, and after so many hours and blah blah blah. So we searched for about 11 hours, so all day. Couldn't find it, and basically we never found it.
What? You
Oh,
never
wow.
found it?
Never found it.
Oh.
I suspect that the anchor, because I had a second anchor. Of course, you have more than one anchor on a boat, but it was a smaller one, and it wasn't as good as the one I had to cut off, right? And the boat was never found. I stayed in the Bahamas. No, you have to imagine I had $20 in my pocket,
Oh no.
and that's it. And I have the clothes on my back. Fortunately, I had my laptop with me. Fortunately, I had my passport. So I recounted my story on the cruisers forum, and a lot of great people sent me, $5, $20, blah blah blah, and I got some money, which allowed me to stay a couple of weeks over there, and then I had to relinquish, and I hadn't seen my parents for a few years, and so I flew back to France, and I bought another boat here.
Doing it all over again.
So I didn't learn my lesson. Yeah, and so sometimes I'm maritime mobile. It happens. Yeah, but I got a 20-footer this time. It's even smaller. It's a little too small for me, but it's a great place here. I'm in Antibes, the French Riviera on the Mediterranean. So it's between Cannes and Nice. The Cannes Festival, the movie festival.
Yep.
And the town of Nice, 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 but it's Nice. And I'm smack in between, basically, and I'm right on. I can see the water right there. I look through my window, so
Very nice.
I can't complain. But it's not the US.
Yeah.
It's we don't have the amount of the level of freedoms that you guys enjoy over there. I'm not going to say anything else. You said no politics, so I'll keep it at that.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, we've been going over an hour, quite a bit over. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Gosh, I can't thank you enough for coming and joining. I really enjoyed your stories and your knowledge about ham radio, Jill. Thank you. You've been a great guest. Yeah.
Well, I suppose you're subscribed, and I invite everyone else to subscribe to my channel, Radio Prepper. And I'll keep on posting and experimenting.
Cool. Good. Okay. So hang around after we end the stream, and we'll just wrap up offline. But Brian and Dan, go ahead and say your goodbyes, and then we'll end it.
See everybody later. We'll hope we'll catch you on the air and down the road.
Have a good one.
Jill,
right.
thanks for being a guest. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you guys.